Well, good morning, class. It's time for another lecture, and this lecture is going to be about the Northern Kingdom. We know that during the later years of King Solomon, the country turned to idolatry led by Solomon, and God warned Solomon that he was going to take away 10 of the 12 tribes from his descendants. He would leave only one for the sake of David. With the death of Solomon, Rehoboam comes to the throne, Solomon's son. Rehoboam, a very foolish young king, when he is asked to lower the taxes and ease the burden that the people are facing, instead of doing that, he goes to his young advisors, and those advisors tell him that to warn the people that he's going to raise the taxes and be even harder than his father. And with that, 10 of the 12 tribes revolt. At the same time, the prophet Ahijah has gone to a young man in Solomon's kingdom, a man by the name of Jeroboam. And he has promised Jeroboam that God is going to give him 10 of the 12 tribes. Jeroboam returns from Egypt, where he has fled at the time of the division. And when the 10 tribes turn away from Rehoboam, they will make Jeroboam king. Now let's take a look at these two countries, the northern country of Israel, the southern country of Judah. The tribes which did not revolt is the tribe of Judah, which, of course, that is the tribe which has the ancestry of David in it. And so they're loyal to their son and the descendants of David. The tribe of Simeon has been assimilated by the tribe of Judah. It's lost its own identity, and thus it stays with the tribe of Judah. Thus you have one tribe staying, and in reality two, but only 10 departing. Jerusalem, the capital of the southern kingdom, is actually located in the tribe of Benjamin. So there would be some of the Benjamites that would still be in the southern kingdom. And then you also have a number of Levites that will migrate to the southern kingdom because the northern kingdom moves away from using Levites as their priests. The northern kingdom under Jeroboam will only last a little over 200 years, and then it will be conquered by the Assyrians. The division occurs approximately in 931 BC, and at 721 BC, the northern kingdom ceases to exist. The people are hauled away into captivity and predominantly never return. Some of the poor that are still there, some of the new people that are moved in, will intermarry and will become the race of Samaritans in the New Testament. The southern country of Judah, it will last about 350 years from the time of the division at 931 BC. And at 606 BC, Jerusalem will fall to the Babylonian Empire, not the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrians are from Mesopotamia. Their capital is Nineveh. Nineveh is conquered by the Babylonians. And Babylon will take Jerusalem in 606. In 586 BC, Jerusalem will be destroyed. The temple will be destroyed. The rest of the people will be taken off as captives to Babylon. Some of the poor left behind will flee to Egypt. The land is left almost barren. But they will return in 536. They will then rebuild their temple. And at the time of Jesus, it is this group of people, the Jews, or from the tribe of Judah, that are in the land of Israel. The northern kingdom. Every single king will be a wicked king. All of them will follow Jeroboam in the sins that he began. None will be excluded. Judah will have some good and some evil kings. And so that one is a mixture. In the northern country of Israel, there will be numerous dynasties as somebody usurps power, establishes themselves as king, reigns for a period of time, and he may be killed and somebody else put on the throne, seizes the throne, or perhaps his son is killed and somebody else seizes the throne. In the southern kingdom of Judah, you will have a descendant of David that is on the throne the entire time, except for one brief period in which Athaliah usurps the throne for 6 years, and then she is put to death, and Joash is put on the throne. He is the son of David. All right, let's talk about Jeroboam. Jeroboam was given the kingdom, but he is deeply concerned and worried because the people are going down to Jerusalem to worship in the temple. So he determines to build an altar at Bethel and at Dan, so that the people do not have to go down to Jerusalem. These altars are these golden calves that he is going to build, is to be representative of worship of Jehovah, but in an idolatrous way. He will also make priests of people who are not from the tribe of Levi. God will send a prophet to warn him. That prophet warns him. The altar splits. The king's hand is withered. The king Jeroboam asks him to restore his hand, which he does. And then he invites him to his home to eat. And the old prophet, whose name is not known, says no, that God had told him not to eat or drink while he was in the land of Israel. And so he returns. However, an old prophet catches him on the way, invites him to his home for dinner and to eat, and says that God had given him a message that he was to take him to his own home to eat and drink. And in reality, he was lying. And because of that, a lion is going to kill that prophet on the trip home. Jeroboam, however, never turns from his idolatry. He will be known throughout the book of Kings as the man who made Israel to sin. Jeroboam will reign for a period of time. His son will go to the throne, and they will all be killed by a usurper that seizes the throne. That man will reign for a period of years. His son will take the throne, and they will all be killed by another usurper that seizes the throne. However, that usurper is not able to establish his kingdom, and a man by the name of Omri, he's in charge of the military, and he's going to seize power and establish himself as the king. The Bible will say this about Omri, that he is more wicked than all the kings which were before him. Now, that's not too good. His son, when he comes to the throne, the Bible makes this statement: he is more wicked than all the kings before him. And above it all, he married the daughter of the king of Tyre and Sidon, Jezebel. And it seems like that she is the real problem behind the throne. Well, God has a great prophet, though. In the middle of all this, God sends his man. It's only been about 80 years. You know, the older people could remember a better day. A few could remember that day before they had plunged headlong into idolatry and began the worship of the god of Baal and goddess Ashtaroth. The prophet that shows up is a man by the name of Elijah. Elijah is a rough, tough outdoorsman. He hollers out to Ahab, "There will neither be rain nor dew until I say so." And with that, Elijah will completely disappear, and they'll begin to search for him. As I mentioned, Elijah was an outdoorsman. He went over to the brook Cherith, down into the Jordan River Valley, crossed the Jordan River, into the rugged mountains, and somewhere where this brook is winding its way down through one of those canyons to get to the Jordan River, somewhere there Elijah establishes himself, and for months he will stay there as God sends food to him. The ravens will feed him there, and he drinks water from the brook. After a period of time, when the brook dries up, God sends him to a widow in the town of Zarephath. Now, the very interesting thing about this town is it is not in Israel. It is in the Phoenician kingdom, where Jezebel came from. Tyre and Sidon are the two major cities of Phoenicia. About halfway between those two cities, along the seacoast of the Mediterranean, is the town of Zarephath. And so Elijah walks through most of the country, crosses the border, and there a widow woman who has a little barrel of meal will feed him for the next 3.5 years, or 3 years, while the famine is still on and while there is no rain. At the end of that time, Elijah will show back up, and he will demand a meeting on top of Mount Carmel. I want to take a look just at a few spots on the map where we're talking about here. Here is a map of Israel. The capital of Israel is located in the town right about in this vicinity right here. He will flee over to the brook Cherith, which would be right here, down across this area, and down in this canyon right here somewhere, Elijah will spend several months. He will then travel all the way across over here, past the city of Tyre, up to the city of Zarephath, where he will locate himself for the next 3.5 years. When Elijah returns, he comes and he meets with the advisor of Ahab, tells Ahab to come and meet with him, and then he says, we're going to meet together at Mount Carmel, which is located right here. And so he challenges them to this showdown at Mount Carmel, and it is going to be the God that answers by fire. Well, the gods of Baal, they cannot answer by fire. They cry all day. They scream all day. They and their 400 prophets. Elijah fixes his offering, piles up the wood, sets the sacrifice, pours 12 barrels of water on it, gives a brief prayer, and fire flies from heaven, consumes the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the water. Now, one interesting thing is Mount Carmel right here overlooks this valley right here, the valley of Megiddo or Armageddon. You can see clear across to the town of Jezreel. You can see up here to where the town of Nazareth would be. You can see over here where the city of Megiddo is. It is one of the most visible sites in all of the land of Israel. And I can picture as there was a dry period, the people are looking for, hopefully, at Mount Carmel to see what God will do. And that flash of light at the evening time could be seen throughout much of the land of Israel. God did not do it secretly. He did it wide open. Elijah will then go on top of the mountain. He will pray for rain. And he tells Ahab he'd better get home to Jezreel, which is right here, because there's going to be a great rain. And these 17 miles, Elijah is going to outrun the chariots of Ahab to the town of Jezreel. Now when Ahab tells Jezebel, she sends a message to Elijah that he is going to be like one of her prophets. You see, Elijah had all the prophets of Baal slain. In other words, Jezebel says, Elijah, I'm going to kill you. And Elijah flees from Jezreel all the way down to the border of the country of Judah, goes all the way down through Judah, clear to the bottom side of the map, and goes out into the wilderness a period of distance. And there he lays down and he tells the angel, let me die. Tells God to let him die. Well, he didn't really need to run that hard because Jezebel was trying to answer that prayer. But instead, God sent an angel. God fed him. But Elijah is not done yet. He's going to run and continue clear down to Mount Sinai, another 200 and some miles, down to where God had spoken to Moses. And there he will meet with God, and God will inform him that there are 7,000 men which have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. And God sends him back to do a job. One of the major jobs that Elijah has to do is he has to call his successor to follow him in the work. And he calls Elisha to follow him. And Elisha then begins to follow Elijah. Another thing Elijah will do is Elijah will go down to the field, the vineyard of Naboth, which has been illegally seized by Ahab through the conniving of his wife Jezebel, who has had Naboth, the owner, killed. You can imagine the shock of Ahab when he goes down to see what he has just obtained and walks around the corner of the vineyard, and lo and behold, Elijah is there. Another incident that happens is that after the death of Ahab, the next king, he falls through a lattice. He is on his deathbed. He sends down to some heathen gods to find out if he's going to recover. And Elijah sends a message, tell him he's going to die. And Ahaziah sends 50 men down to bring Elijah back so he can talk to him himself. And fire comes down from heaven and consumes those 50 men. He sends 50 more men. Fire comes down from heaven and consumes those men. He sends another 50 men. You know, I would think by this time that the king really would say, you know, maybe I shouldn't be wasting men like this. But that captain, he falls on his face before Elijah and begs for his life. And anyway, Ahaziah dies, and Jehoram, also called Joram, comes to the throne, the son of Ahab. Meanwhile, God is wanting to send take Elijah to heaven without dying. And Elisha asks for one thing. He says, I want a double portion of your spirit. And Elijah says, if you see me when I go up, you can have that. Elisha will follow Elijah down from one town to the next across the Jordan River, and a chariot of fire will come down from heaven, and it says Elijah goes up in a whirlwind. And as Elijah goes up, his mantle comes floating back down. Elisha picks up that mantle and walks back to the Jordan River, which had parted to let Elijah through. He whacks the water, and he says, where is the Lord God of Elijah? And the water departs hither and thither, and Elisha walks over on dry ground. Let me just compare these two men. Elisha is going to be around for a long time, maybe about 50 years. Elijah's only been around for 10. Elisha is a man of the city. Elijah was a man of the countryside. Of the miracles that are listed, Elisha is going to do twice as many. Elijah had raised one person from the dead. Elisha also will raise a person from the dead, and after he's dead, his body will raise somebody else from the dead. This is the time of many, many great miracles. But we're going to stop at this point, and we're going to continue the story of Elisha in the next lecture.